Welcome to this week's History Clip, part of our Hands-on History at Your House series. We're exploring the history of the people of the Mahoning Valley with these short videos, online activities, and museum challenges. For more information, be sure to visit our website, www.mahoninghistory.org. This week is all about the people who helped this region grow into a major industrial center and a bustling city filled with world-class entertainment, shopping, and even an amusement park. The Mahoning Valley has long been a region of immigrants. In the years leading up to the American Civil War, German immigrants made up the largest community. As we will see with many other cultures that made their home here, they worked to keep their heritage alive. In 1860, when 45.4% of the population was foreign-born, that's nearly half, Germans accounted for about 10% of all of the residents of Youngstown. And the Youngstown Rundschau, which is a newspaper, was founded in 1873, and it catered to that large German-speaking population in Youngstown. By the 1880s, industry in the Mahoning Valley was dominated by moderate-sized factories producing iron. People worked in coal mines, and the population of the region saw steady but not intense growth. That quickly changed over the next few years as a new industry swept in: steel. And soon steel mills had popped up all along the Mahoning River banks, and the face of this region changed forever. For example, many people today have Italian heritage, but according to the census of 1880, there were no Italian immigrants in either Mahoning or Trumbull County. Few people do think that there were some immigrants from Italy who had made their way across Pennsylvania and into the valley, but only a handful. The first documented Italian immigrants to the area were recruited by the Brown and Bonnell Iron Company in 1872 to work in area coal mines. And similarly in Trumbull County, there were reports that said about 7 Italians had taken up residence in 1880. That all quickly changed, and by 1910, nearly 6,500 Italian immigrants called this area home. By 1920, that number reached well over 10,000, and the magnet that drew these Italians to the region was the promise of work in those steel mills and other factories. Between 1900 and 1930, the population of Youngstown nearly quadrupled. It went from 45,900 people in 1900 to over 170,000 people in the Great Depression around 1930, making it one of the 50 largest cities in the United States. And that's just the city of Youngstown. That doesn't include surrounding areas like Boardman or Austintown or Lowellville. By 1940, about 1 in every 7 people in Youngstown had been born in a foreign country, and thousands more were the children of foreign-born parents. This meant that more than half of the city of Youngstown's population was what they called foreign stock. Now, most of these newcomers had to live close to the mills because they walked to work. Most could not afford a horse or even a car when cars became the thing, and as a result, many settled immediately north or south of the Mahoning River. The largest concentration moved into East Youngstown when Youngstown Sheet and Tube located its mills there. And people across the world knew that you could find work here in the Youngstown area, and thousands made the move here for jobs. Couple of examples. Youngstown Sheet and Tube only employed a few hundred people in the year 1900. 10 years later, they employed about 5,000 people, and 10 years after that, in 1920, they employed over 11,000 people in their factory. And one of the best examples of the impact of this immigrant community is in this employment sign at Youngstown Sheet and Tube. You can see there are several languages represented here, including English, Hungarian, Romanian, German, Czech, and Slovak. So people from all over the world were working in these mills, and it was important that their languages were represented in these types of safety signs in those factories. Organizations like the International Institute were formed to help people transition to life here in America, but also keep their ethnic and cultural roots alive and active. They provided English classes, clubs, programs. They helped people become American citizens and helped to bring their family members over from other countries. In this image from an International Institute guest night in 1950, you see the residents showing off their traditional clothing of their home countries. There are 8 different nationalities represented: Slovak, Spanish, Swedish, Palestinian, Greek, Romanian, Macedonian, and Ukrainian. Community was very important, and groups, clubs, publications, restaurants, and neighborhoods began to emerge with strong ethnic roots. One of the most important community elements was places of worship. Churches, temples and synagogues, mosques, and other religious sites were often linked with specific ethnic groups, like the Lebanese Maronite Center on Meridian Road, the Holy Trinity Romanian Orthodox Church on Wick Avenue, and the Holy Trinity Ukrainian Catholic Church on West Rayan Avenue. So who were some of these people? Well, perhaps the most famous Youngstown immigrants were a group of brothers who revolutionized the way we are entertained, and they are Harry, Sam, Albert, and Jack Warner. Their father arrived in the United States in 1887, and the rest of the family arrived here in 1895. Harry, Sam, and Albert were all born in Poland, but Jack was born here in the U.S. The family settled here in Youngstown, and they had several business ventures, selling bicycles, soap, ice cream, and they even had a butcher shop. But by the early 1900s, the family had invested in a movie projector. They traveled all across the region, and they showed those movies in tents. A few years later, they purchased a movie theater over in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, and a few years after that, they began to produce their own movies. Eventually, they moved out to California and established a major movie production company known as the Warner Brothers Company. They still continued to build theaters around the country, and they had a spectacular one right here in Youngstown. It was dedicated in honor of Sam, who passed away in 1927. It's still here today, but you know it as the Dior Performing Arts Center. So we all know that Warner Brothers name. They have given us so many classic characters and movies, and we see it all over television as well. Now we know their name, but there are so many more people who made important impacts in this area, and we're going to learn about their history next week as we look at some of the unsung heroes of the Mahoning Valley and people you may have never heard of, but you definitely should know. Now that you've learned more about the people who helped this area grow, be sure to check out our website for your hands-on history at your house activities. Become a proud museum assistant by completing all of those activities, or learn even more and become a museum curator by researching the history of your family and where your ancestors came from. All of the challenge information can be found there on our website, and be sure to share your creations online with the hashtag HistoryAtMyHouse2021. And we'll see you next week.